on Dave's Gone By. We've got to welcome our guest to the Dave Room. And this is a perfect segue right from our Inside Broadway segment, because with us in the studio, of all things, we actually have someone that I've known for many, many years, my old boss, Robert Viagas. Oh my God, we just shook hands. Oh no, I've got the plague.
You need to move that out so Robert can get in.
Oh, does he have not enough?
Yeah, I'll move it. I'm going to move some stuff. Yeah.
I take large steps.
You hold this, Mr. Robert.
That's your beverage.
Yeah.
We can also get you coffee or something. But,
if you like coffee, I can make you a coffee.
Yeah, can you make?
Oh, we have a homemade still of in the
no
bathtub.
milk,
It's
no
good.
sugar?
A black and bitter.
Ooh, okay.
Black and bitter,
Like
really?
my women.
Oh, this is going to be
Robert,
fun.
TMI.
Now let's make sure we're visually here. Yes, this is sort of homemade-ish. I'll get in a little bit closer. I'll try not to get too much spittle on you while we're talking. There we go. Hello. And
do you have any of Robert's books here? Or in Colorado?
Here, they were in Colorado. So there we go. Oh, did you bring any? Because
no,
I
forgot.
Oh.
All the hubbub of reading about your crocodile-infested moat that I'd have to cross. I walked right past them. I packed them. I put them by the door. I walked right past them.
No, I'm good. I mean, we usually have
but
to
I have
feed
them all up here.
Do you really? Yeah. By the way, and
Robert,
that
your mind palace.
Yes. It's closest we're getting to the Palace Theater in the next month. I'll tell you that much.
Sure.
Robert Viagas, let me give you a proper introduction.
All right.
I've never done anything proper in my life, as you know. But
it was the first time for
Robert Viagas is. Oh, look over the. I don't know. Better with or without the glasses. Let's see.
Nothing's gonna help.
No. Yeah, dude, you're a handsome guy. I saw you at the theater a couple of weeks ago, and you were in there in the suit and the tie. And I'm like, whoo, my goodness. I'm straight, but I thought, oh.
As you see, I'm schleppy for your podcast.
Yeah. Are you? You don't have any kind of a cold.
I have no kind of a cold.
Good. Okay. Good. Yeah. Because I do. Just kidding. Now, Robert was truly my old boss. He is the founding editor.
Yeah.
God.
Just me being the old boss. Go ahead.
No, that didn't look like old.
No.
What you were doing was like.
No,
that looked very different.
That was me walking with a cane and having no teeth.
No, that's how I got my last job. I'll tell you something. Anyway, this is the reason you're not an actor, man. This is not walking with a cane.
Okay.
This is something else.
Right. I'm trying to move that up so it can be seen. See, if I do it down here with the actual cane, then nobody sees.
Yeah, no, this is a scene from
Slave
Play and the Inheritance is what this is.
That's right.
Anyway, so, we're not even going to talk about Broadway. No, yes, of course we are, because I'm your old boss. Yeah, my former boss. And can you believe this was 22 years ago when I first came to play? It was 1998 that I was first hired there. You had been there since
sooner than that. I thought it was earlier than that.
No, you were there.
I was there from 1990. I created in 1994. 1994. Yes, that was this. We created Playbill.com in the season where, you may recall, they gave the best score and best book award outright to Sunset Boulevard.
Oh yeah.
Why?
That. Yeah.
Because there were no other shows that had scores or books original scores and original books that season, so they just gave it to them. This is the
sick.
That was the that's the only reason that that was the season that we started Playbill.com. So it was hard to get news, is what.
I got it. Yeah. Well, this was before Disney encroached on 42nd Street. So
Disney was in the process of encroaching at that point. Yeah. So there was something to cover there.
And you know who else? That fraudulent guy was trying to make inroads.
The fraudulent guy. He was yes.
Canadian.
That's right. Garth Drabinsky.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was happening too. So I didn't realize it took like 2 or 3, 4 years for play. How long between like sitting down with the can we name the publisher?
Up to you. It's your podcast.
Well, I don't want to put you in any kind of uncomfortable. Are you still connected in any way?
No, I'm retired. I'm retired from Playbill. I retired in 2018.
Retired.
Yes.
So your pension and all that sort of thing. Yeah. You smart man. Oh, I was so stupid. I couldn't take it no
they
more.
Were kind
I
of pushing out people at the high end of the
salary
that too. Level. But you know.
Oh, but you have no hard feelings then?
Not really. No.
Okay. Good. Good. Okay.
I know you do have hard feelings.
I do have. Well,
yes.
Well, no. We can talk about this if you're okay.
Let's talk
about how I got your job.
Talk about how I got my job. Okay. When I was a teenager, in Franklin Square, Long Island.
Yeah.
I had a dream. I had a dream, Dave. And
Yeah.
that was, I wanted to, I love theater. I wanted to start a daily newspaper that would put theater on the front page every day.
Your mouth to God's ears.
Well, I mean, if you look at the newspapers, and I'll say newspapers because at that point that was the dominant media, and so you want it to be in newspapers. They're not the little skinny things that you can see sunlight through the way they are now. But they were, when you got that Sunday Times, that was a big fat newspaper. I mean, you would get a hernia lifting that thing up. Anyway, Dave did. That's right. And he showed it to us.
It actually really is true. I had a hernia when I was working at Playbill. Yeah.
We wanted to. I was working. I started as an intern. I started working for my local newspaper, the Franklin Square Bulletin. I had a column in the Franklin Square Bulletin,
wow.
Franklin Square Bulletin, and so my column was called "Theater in the Square." Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would review shows in New York, and I'd review shows on Long Island. And
so, wait, can I ask, was that your first connection of any kind besides being a theater fan? You had no other jobs in the theater. You had no other theater teaching experience. Did you study theater in college or anything like that?
I was originally going to be a veterinarian. I was going to be a veterinarian, and I was in pre-vet at Hofstra subsequent to this. But I did love theater, and I also worked for the Hofstra Chronicle. I was the theater critic and eventually arts editor for the Hofstra Chronicle. And I just found that I enjoyed working in the newspaper office much more than I enjoyed going to the lab. And so when I was between my sophomore and junior year, I changed my major to communications. So I actually have major in communications, minors in chemistry, biology, and theater.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So, yeah, it was fun. But I always loved theater, and I wrote for the Franklin Square Bulletin starting when I was 17.
Right.
And then the reason I was working for the Chronicle at Hofstra so I could get free tickets to shows.
Sure, of course.
I loved seeing shows. And I had this, and then all the students, one day I came into the Chronicle office, and all the students were there filling out something. I said, what is that? They said, Newsday has a program where they have a summer internship for aspiring journalists. And I said, well, that sounds interesting. I think I'll apply too. And suddenly it was like Cinderella and the Ugly Stepsisters. And they're like, you're not a journalism major. You're a biology major. I was a biology major at the time. And they said, they're not going to let you go in there. You know, you're Cinderella. Go and pick lentils out of the fireplace. You're not going to get this. And I said,
I've done that too, by the way. Yeah.
So I filled out a form, and it was a very enthusiastic form. I included my theater reviews and things like that. And I think you know where the story is going. I was the only person from Hofstra who was chosen for this internship. In fact, there were only 2 people from all of Long Island were chosen for this. Another one actually was a young lady who lived here in Hewlett and now writes for the New York Post, Barbara Hoffman.
Oh, okay.
The 2 of us were the 2 that were chosen that summer to be interns. So, meh.
So who was it, Jan? Who? Yeah, you kind of get sucked into watching yourself on the screen there. But who was? It wasn't Linda Weiner then. Who did you study with at Newsday in terms of learning about the theater, or would it have been?
There was
Jan somebody. Or,
no, it was a gentleman who had been George Oppenheimer.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
There's an Oppenheimer Award that's given, and Oppenheimer was a good guy. But they actually for some reason, didn't put me in what was then called Part 2. They didn't put me in the arts section of the paper.
Of course.
They put me in news. And I mean, my background, I worked hard news. I covered fires and murders and elections, which are actually kind of very similar.
I don't know if you remember that. I'm going to break in on this because I don't know if you remember this. But when I interviewed when you interviewed me for the job, and I was doing very well in the interview, but then there was one thing that you were worried about. When I was stating my qualifications, how I love theater, and I said, well, I mean, we cover it, we get it, but it's like covering a fire or whatever. And you're like, no, you're like,
exactly
it is.
It's exactly what it's like. And I wanted, so let me just back up a little bit. Working for these newspapers, I looked at the newspapers and I was like, theater is the engine that drives New York City. I mean, all the other things that kind of spread outward from that, but that is the grain of sand at the center of the pearl in New York. I mean, I'm very alarmed now that they've stopped the Broadway shows. But I said, they put sports on the front page sometimes. They put politics, of course, always on the front page. Crime. Why isn't Broadway on the front page? The only time they would ever put theater on the front page is when there was some kind of a scandal. And so imagined what it would be like to start a newspaper that would put theater on the front page every day. And I mentioned this to some of the other reporters there, and they're like, they're like, you want this to be national? Don't forget that our economic model is based on the fact that 12-year-olds on bicycles deliver our product. Now, of course, it's grown-ups who throw it out the window of the car. But in those days, it was 12-year-olds on bicycles. I said, you're going to have to hire 12-year-olds on bicycles all across the country to deliver this thing, to get enough people reading it in order to make it economically possible. So I was like, oh, well, so I just kind of put it in the back of my head, and then the internet came along. And suddenly, I realized I could create my daily newspaper that put theater on the front page every single day. I didn't have to worry about 12-year-olds on bicycles.
And you didn't have to worry about fires and floods. You could just do theater.
Well, if there are fires and floods sometimes in the theater. Look what's happening right now. Yeah. If you remember, we were a theater newspaper with a sports section, because we would cover the Broadway bowling league in the winter, and we'd cover the softball league at Central Park in the summer.
Okay,
we had a sports section
and an obituary.
And an obituary section. That's right.
Yeah, that's true.
So then I needed a reporter.
Well, but not weather. You didn't do weather.
We would do weather when the snow closed the Broadway theaters. We covered that.
Weather, you did. Yes,
we covered that.
Okay.
It was a newspaper. I came from the hard news background, and I created something that was treating Broadway like hard-breaking daily
But wait,
news.
you said you created, I mean, how did you link up, or as opposed to just doing something yourself? How did this sort of...
Well, I was working for a company called Prodigy, which was an online...
Yeah.
Don't forget...
AOL was like...
Don't forget, this was before they had browsers.
Wow.
Before there were browsers, they used to have these online services, AOL and Prodigy and CompuServe and things like that. Because if you didn't know the URL of the site you were looking for, there was no way to find it. Then along came Mosaic, which was the first browser, where you could put in the name of something you were looking for, and it would find the URL for you. Now we take these things for granted, but there was a time before all of this. This is how long I've been doing this. And then, because when I was working for Prodigy, and I was what was called a producer, which is a grandiose title for what I did. Basically, what would happen is in those days, magazines, big magazines, the president would read in a business magazine, you have to get on this thing called the World Wide Web. And they would call in the vice president and say, get us on the World Wide Web. And the vice president would go into a panic because they had no idea what it was. Yeah. And they'd come to us and they'd be like, oh, we got to put our magazine on the World Wide Web. Help, help, help. And I would say, well, what would you like to put on? What information? They said, well, we're thinking of putting all our old back issues on. That would be great. People can look up all our back issues. I said, that's not the way the web works. The web is interactive and it's immediate. You have to have something that changes not once a month, not once a week, not once a day. You have to have something that changes constantly, and you have to have a way for people to respond, to give you feedback, and you have to be able to respond to them. That is the essence of how the web works. And so I started doing this. And one day, my supervisor called me and she said, I have a magazine you're going to love. Because she knew that I had continued to write about the theater for various publications. And I also, on Prodigy, I was what was called the theater expert, where people would send in questions like, what's the best seat in the theater? What should I wear on Saturday night? Questions like that, and I would answer.
By the way, the answer was no underpants.
No underpants. Yeah. Well, that's Dave's thing. I hired Dave, by the way, despite the fact that he came to the interview wearing white socks. And I have to say, Dave is wearing white socks today.
Hold on. Oh! There they are.
Please.
There hangs my way.
Please, my friend.
Well, you noticed that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And the no pants also.
That's why they're so visible, yeah.
So
So
they called me in and they said, we have a magazine you're going to like. It's called Playbill.
Oh, well, you knew Playbill.
Of course I knew Playbill, but they wanted to be on the World Wide Web. And there was, as I said, they did not have a website. There was no, having a website was actually hard to find. What you wanted to do was get on one of these online services, because then people could find you.
Right.
So they came to me and I spoke to them and they said, well, I said to them, well, what do you want to put on? What would you want to do? What would you like? What information do you want to put? They said, we'd like to be the encyclopedia of theater on the internet. We'll put all of our who's who's on your service, and then people can look up anybody that they want to look up, and it'll be the encyclopedia of theater on the internet. And I said, do you want to sell ads? I said, I noticed that you're ad-based and playbills are free. One of the few things that are still free about going to the theater.
Yeah.
I noticed they're free, so I must be ad-supported. Do you want to sell ads? I said, yes, we do. And I said, do you see any ads in the encyclopedia? When you open the encyclopedia, are there any ads in there? Versus when you open the newspaper. They used to have ads, by the way, in the newspaper. They used to have a lot of ads. And I said, versus the newspaper. What you want to be is the newspaper of theater on the internet. You have, and they said, well, is there enough news? I said, oh, it depends how you define news. I mean, if you only define opening nights as the news, then no, there's not going to be enough. But if you define when tickets go on sale, when a theater is chosen, when a major actor is hired, anything like that, if you define all these things as theater news, something that theater people, when cast albums are released, when, if there's a discount, anything like that, if you count that as news, if you define that as theater news, you'll have plenty of theater news. I bet you'll have 2 or 3 stories a day. Now you have to realize at a certain point we were moving 30 to 40 stories a day.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we as well, you know, because you were writing.
I was writing 10 of them. Yeah.
They hired me on that basis, and that's how I got to and we got to start. I came in one day into what used to be the conference room. There were computers in boxes, and they were just like,
"Oh,
go to it, champ."
Was Andrew there at that point?
Koo, no. Koo came later.
Okay.
I'm talking about Andrew Koo. Right?
Yeah.
No, he came later.
Because he was the tech savvy. Yeah.
Well, we had another guy.
Okay.
We had another guy who was our tech guy. And you know, it just started from there. It just went rolling. I have to say, the early days were kind of the Wild West. I have a story.
Yeah.
You may remember this. This is now the mid-90s, and there was a war going on. A civil war was going on in Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was breaking up into the constituent republics. All wanted to be independent. Now, in those days,
back then I was one of the kings of Yugoslavia.
That's
so
right. That's right.
That's how I remember this. Yeah.
That's right. Kerning. You have to realize during this time, one of the things that websites would do, and we did eventually get a website, and we eventually closed down as those services closed down. Once there were browsers, we had a website, we could control it, we could put ads on it, we could do all sorts of things.
Right.
Then we switched over to that. So in those early days of websites, what would happen is websites would have a feature called Website of the Week, or Website of the Day, or whatever, and they would promote other websites. And they would, I would get an email from somebody saying, we're going to promote playbill.com as our website of the week. Please promote us. So then, these are in the days when you had like hundreds, if not just dozens of readers. And so you were doing anything you could to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And so you would promote yourself here and there and everywhere. So one day I'm sitting there and I get an email from the Croatian Provisional Government website. Croatia was one of the constituent republics of Yugoslavia, and it was trying to break away from Yugoslavia. And they were having a horrendous war over this. And I got an email from them saying, we have chosen playbill.com as site of the week on the Croatian Provisional website. And so we hope you will promote us on playbill.com. And I tried to imagine what this was like over there. You know, they're fighting. Stop! Whoopi Goldberg is going to replace Nathan Lane in the Forum revival. Can you believe it? Zelchko. Whoopi's going into Forum. And I'm trying to imagine from the Serbian side, they go, you Croatian dogs. She's going to be terrible. I hate her. She just rubs me the wrong way. And they go, no, it's a very bold, non-traditional casting. No, you dogs, you pigs. A black woman as playing a slave? It's terrible. It's poor taste. No, she's brilliant. She can do anything. So that was what it was like.
I didn't realize he would be the funniest guest I ever had since Gilbert Gottfried was on here. Oh my God!
Morty's here.
That's what that was what it was like in the early days of Playbill.com.
Well, wait, how did it work out with the Croats? I mean, what did
I didn't put there's nothing that I did not reciprocate.
Oh man!
I did not reciprocate. The person who was the boss of Playbill would have. I would have gotten the phone would have actually jumped off the desk if I had put them as site of the week on Playbill.
You go your way, and they
That's
went
right.
theirs.
If you remember, also in the early days, we had one of the things they used to have these little avatars, like a little figure that would guide you through the site. So we created a figure. Do you remember? We actually created a bunch of figures for different parts of the site, but the main site guide was a chorus girl named Lulu. And Lulu was dressed in tights, and she was like a chorus girl. And we loved her, and she was great. And the readers liked her, except some did not. They thought it was sexist to have her. So we put her in a long dress, but eventually we eliminated eliminated her and all the little avatars off the site.
You heard what happened. Harvey Weinstein raped her.
Oh, my God.
It was terrible.
Poor thing.
Horrible. No, but remember how we all made fun?
I'm glad he got the 23 years or whatever the heck it is he got.
No, but do you remember how we made fun back in the day of our chief closest rival, which was Theater Mania? And they had the Theater Man, and we thought that was so ridiculous. There was a guy in a big afro wig who went around asking like questions in Times Square, and he looked like this bewigged hippie dude, and we were all like, Theater Mania is going nowhere. That's never going to take off. Well, we were kind of wrong about that one. Yeah, but Playbill did.
The avatars all disappeared. That was another early day thing. So we had Dave as our reporter, and Dave used to call people up. But Dave was never really happy, and so he would show his rebellion in different ways.
How?
Started with the socks.
That wasn't rebellion. That's how I dress.
Moved on to the sheep.
Wait, what did I do with a sheep?
You had sheep all over your computer. You had sheep on the floor. You had sheep pictures up, and the sheep. We were alarmed by the sheep. And then you also used to spend a lot of time watching South Park on your computer.
No, I didn't.
You totally did. You would laugh hysterically. And I said, "What's so funny?" And then you'd like play it out loud so we could hear it.
Yeah.
So
I don't remember that at all. I'm so busy working.
I was the supervisor. I remember it.
Oh my God.
So Dave rebelled in certain ways.
Well, I learned my lesson about the socks, though. I don't know if you know this story or if you remember it. I'm sure you remember that. I like to be comfortable at work, and if I could go work in pajamas, I would, right? And especially, I was a very, you say productive. I produced a lot of work.
A lot, tremendous amount, no question.
But, so if I'm working...
We had somebody else who will remain nameless as the reporter, and he just could not understand that you had to write a lot of stories when you were a reporter. And...
well, it was a different era. I mean, he came from an era when you did 2 stories for a newspaper a week, and that was fine.
It was very hard to get him to understand what it was that we were doing. And so Dave was his replacement. Oh. And it was hard, honestly, it was hard to find people in those days who had any experience with writing for the web. Dave had a little experience. It was now, that's where most journalists work. They work on the web. But in those days, it was very hard to find people who actually had some experience. I mean, I had been on the web since 1988. I'm one of the few people actually has web credits from the 1980s. Yes. Many of the people watching this weren't even born then, but I was already working on it.
I think I had
I'm 1,000 years old. Anyway.
I think I had a few stories on like the Saturday Evening Post online thing that was a sort of an offshoot of AOL. And I had some theater stuff there. I forgot about that. But let me tell you, I do want to share the footwear story. Because I like to be comfortable. And I've got these big, white, nasty bunion feet. Nasty. Right? Yeah. So I would wear... no shirt. I would take my first thing when I got in the room. I turned on the computer because it took 10 minutes for the computer to boot up.
Tell the bathroom story.
That's what I'm literally going there. That's exactly where I'm going. And I wouldn't want to bother putting my shoes on every time I left my desk to go talk to somebody, to go down the hallway to get whatever, a coffee or something. So even to the bathroom, I'll just toggle over the bathroom. No big deal. Well, we had a fellow working at Playbill. You'll remember this. Who was an advertising guy, and he started at Playbill as a copy boy during World War II. Mm-hmm. You know who I'm talking about?
World War I, I believe.
You're talking
Spanish-American War.
Civil War.
When cavemen were battling. He was a really nice guy, and the reason they kept him on was the nice. I mean, he didn't really do that much, but he didn't have to, because if the advertising people were having trouble with the company, he knew the CEO of the company for the past 40 years.
He was like the guy Willie Loman admires, who can just pick up his phone and just do business by making one phone call.
Yeah. And
that
save
guy
the
worked
day.
at Playbill.
Yeah, he did. He worked at Playbill for 60-something years. Mm-hmm. He did. But he was blind. at that
no.
point. He was
His
basically
aim was poor.
blind. And he would go to the bathroom. You didn't know this story? You didn't know this happened to me? Oh my God! We knew when he would go to the
We're in
bathroom.
the too much information part of this.
It's fantastic. What was his name? We can say his name.
Don't say his name.
No,
Don't
not
say
to say
his
no.
name.
Not we're going to embarrass him.
Honestly, I only
I have too
remember
much
it.
respect for him. No.
But the point is, he would go to the bathroom, and you knew
Well,
when
you
he'd been to the
assume.
bathroom.
You don't know it was him. You assume.
True.
It could have been Robert.
You
It
know.
wasn't me.
Yeah.
Well, you ever have a thing where you take a pee and it's bifurcated? Did that ever happen to you? Where it doesn't come out in one stream, it comes out sort of like two, and you can't really. Never happened.
But that's a disease.
Okay. Anyway, but it wasn't him. It wasn't me. And this one time, I'm heading to the bathroom. I've got stuff on my mind, whatever story I'm writing, and I realize that my white socks are now no longer dry. Robin is just sitting there.
He's horrified.
And I look down, and I'm just standing in this old guy's pee.
You assume.
Allegedly. I'm standing in lemonade. There's lemonade. Someone spilled lemonade in the bathroom. And from then on, I'm like, okay, when I leave my desk, the shoes go back on. And
I thought you usually paid extra for that, Dave.
Yes, indeed. You know what I'm saying? So what other extent? Because I remember this also you didn't know was that after you had that conflagration, the blow up with the publisher, and I was whatever, I got onto your computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was sort of like the same day, so there was no time to leave or whatever anything.
Right.
And I saw at one point when you had emails back and forth between you and the publisher, and you know, frustrated with my weirdness or whatever, and he wrote to me and said, "What are we going to do with that talented eccentric?"
Mm-hmm.
And I actually took that as a compliment.
That's the tombstone. On the tombstone.
Talented,
Eccentric.
eccentric. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's true. So what was it what happened was, and I did, and I always felt a little bit guilty about this, but not guilty enough not to have done it. But I felt guilty that the day that you / were fired, I took a job, and they called me in. I asked for more money, and you know, we're desperate. They gave it to me, and as opposed to saying, "No, I stand with Robert. You know, you take him. I'm walking."
I appreciate your courageous stand.
Yeah, I did not.
But, in theater,
But what the hell was the argument
isn't it
about?
The show goes on no matter what, right? Someone could break a foot on stage, and you got to.
They would have hired somebody else. It might as well be me and my bank account. So what was it that? Because you almost punched the guy, I think, and
No,
no?
I did not. That's not my way. I mean, I'm not very peaceful.
Kicked him? No.
No.
Did you bite him?
Did you cast a spell?
There was no. My problem was that I'm big. I'm 6'4".
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
250 pounds,
Yeah.
and I think he felt just intimidated.
But was it a silly argument that just because he was in the guy's? I don't know if he's polar or whatever his problem is. He's just there are
I'd
times
rather
when
not
he's
talk
normal.
about him.
Oh, you don't want to talk
I'd
about.
rather not talk about.
Okay, fine.
I'd rather not talk.
Did you
about him.
resent?
Because this is like a personnel thing.
Okay, fair enough. Did you resent that I took the job?
No.
Didn't occur. No.
I mean, you had offered to stand with me.
Oh, did I do that?
Yes, you did.
Oh, I don't
and I
remember that.
said no. I said, yeah, that's ridiculous. Don't
Oh, I don't remember that I
don't
did
crater
that.
your career.
Oh.
And so I was, I
Huh.
had given you my blessing.
I'd forgotten that. Huh.
By the way,
I'm
I thought
glad.
I saw a house with Christmas lights on the block, and I thought, oh, that must be Dave's house.
Definitely
Because
not.
ironically, that would be something you would do. An
Oh, just for
ironic
the
thing
sheer-
that you
yeah.
would do. Yes.
No, but
that's our neighbor who has a fish, a big bass fish, as his mailbox. We'll show you later.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that was
it's
kind of
quite
fun.
scary.
No, but if I were decorating with Christmas, I think it would be sheep in a Santa suit
Mm-hmm.
and
Something
things like that.
Yeah, something
Santa
like that.
being eviscerated with knives, or that would be my.
But the idea of
decoration.
having Christmas lights up so far from Christmas, I think, would have been also
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of a Davy sort of a thing.
Definitely.
Maybe too subtle.
Well, except now everybody's Christmas in July. It's not Crazy Eddie ruined
Mm-hmm.
that for everyone. He made it. What is it? QVC.
Yeah.
They sell
hate
Christmas
that,
ornaments in July. You
Hate
can't
that,
even do it. It is anyway. Nothing funny about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, just to get back
Yeah,
to the other
sure.
thing, we buried the hatchet, and I went back
Oh,
and worked
I
for a
know
long
that.
time. I worked
Yeah.
for longer the second time.
In
than
fact,
I
you
did
got
first
the
time.
second job that I really wanted. You started Playbill Radio.
Started Playbill Radio and Playbill Books, and Playbill Travel, and
Yeah.
a lot of things for that company. So that story kind of had a happy ending.
Anyway, I'm very happy. I'm so glad that you retired and you didn't just quit and said, "Oh, the hell with all these
No.
people." No, that's way cool.
Mhm.
Do you miss it?
to a certain degree, but I'm teaching now and working on book projects, and I do write for a small website.
What website?
It is called Arts Independent, artsindependent.com. And we do not just Broadway, we do off-Broadway and off-Broadway.
Cool.
Which is the off-Broadway and off-Broadway are the only theaters that are functioning in New York now.
Well, at the moment, yeah. Like as of 2 days ago, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to see a show tonight, as a matter of fact.
What the hell's playing? What are you seeing?
I'm going to see a show. I don't know the title of it. I see so many shows. I'm sorry.
No, good. Yeah.
I should know the title.
Where is it?
It's at Urban Stages in the West 30s.
Okay.
Which is nice because I could take.
Well, hey, we can look it up in Performing Arts Insider, the Bible of Broadway. Let's see. Well, I don't have it listed by place though.
Mm-hmm.
I can look it up on the computer.
No, well, yeah, actually you could, but it's all right. Yeah. Any other things to remember about it?
It's a singer who is primarily going to be telling her story or telling a story.
It's not the Miss America one, right?
It's not the Miss America one.
Because what's her name? Bess Meyerson's daughter just did a solo, but that was not it. Oh, anyway, so enjoy. So, how is your schedule? Obviously, neither of us have seen Broadway shows. Do you have a bunch of off things lined up that are still?
Yes, but I mean, we're going to have to wait and see. What's going to. What's going to go on and what's not going to go on. So
I haven't even gotten to my list of questions for this man. By the way, he's Robert Viagas.
You have a very good banter. I like your banter.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, very good.
Well, don't forget, I also, when I started Playbill Radio, I was on. We started the Broadway channel on what's now Sirius XM. It was just Sirius in those days, and so I used to host a daily show. I used to do shows on there. I used to do the news at the top of the hour, and our slogan was, and we used to call ourselves Radio Playbill.
Oh, well, yeah.
Radio Playbill from the heart of Broadway.
Wow.
But were you still in Woodside?
No, actually, I was the Sirius headquarters on 49th Street.
Yeah.
Oh, better.
See, I'm doing this show from the anus of Broadway. That's basically where we are at this moment.
So they also have a note about coronavirus at your.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to see. Charmed Life.
Charmed Life. Okay.
Tonight.
Let me tell the folks a little bit about Charmed Life by going into. I have to do this plug here. By going into Performing Arts Insider, the Bible of Broadway. Let's hope it's in here.
Singing from soul singing to opera star.
Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm going to see tonight.
Let's see. Oh, it's not in this issue. Go figure. Just my luck. Just go figure it. Anyway.
It says comedy, storytelling, and opera rolled into one.
Comedy, storytelling, and opera rolled into one.
Perfect.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It's a limited engagement.
I think tonight might have to be the final performance. I mean, a lot of these shows are shutting down, but we'll see.
Well, I mean,
so I see a lot of shows. I still see a lot of shows. I do all sorts of things, and I may have a big job announcement.
Well, it is the last one.
Yeah, there we go.
They're pausing it after tonight.
They're pausing it after tonight. I think the idea is with Arts Independent. I know the idea is that there's so much of the most vital theater in New York gets done in these small theaters.
Yeah.
And because so few of the major media cover those theaters or any theater at all, that a lot of these things, they come and go, and they're like, as they said in Blade Runner, they're like tears in the rain.
Oh.
They just disappear.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is not necessarily to write reviews so that people will run out and see it, because a lot of the performances, the schedules are very brief.
Well, 3 weeks. They can't be more than
before the reviews out.
So that there's a record that the show was there and who was in it and what it was about and what was done and whether it was that was
the Uber idea 25 something years ago when the Off Broadway review came out, and they were doing that, and then it lasted a bit. So it may still be there.
That's what we tried. That's what we tried to do. We tried to make a permanent record of some of these shows, especially these very worthy off Broadway and off Broadway shows.
Absolutely.
But we also do the Broadway shows because we want people to. We like to have a mass readership.
Well, you bring in the eyes, and then they'll scroll through and maybe read about these other kinds or smaller.
So I felt that I could lend my whatever.
Well,
I used to tell my boys used to say, "Dad, are you famous?" Because I used to appear on television shows and things like that. I used to tell boys, "I'm that famous," and so I'm trying to parlay that much fame rather than endorsing some big political cause. which no one will care whether I like it or not. I feel like this is something that I can
You're
give back.
endorsing theater.
To
Yeah,
give back to the community after so many years.
absolutely. So, but you hinted at
Yes,
a major job.
I may have a major job announcement.
But you can't. No,
I was hoping to do it today, but because all the
because
theaters
of all
shut
the crowd.
down this week, suddenly they're like, let's put this on hold for a couple of days. So I was hoping to make this the place
crap.
that I announced this.
Well, you can
You'll
tell
have
me,
to
and
come
I'll tell
back.
next week. Oh no, absolutely. I mean, you can see how much fun we're having. We should just co-host the show every week. You know? Yeah. Oh, I can't. I can only do it like the Fritz Feld.
Fritz Feld. Oh,
Yes, we know who that is.
that's right.
And I try to be the best Arnold Stang.
That was
I'm sorry, I'll be
that was
quiet.
my
Do that.
Curly. That
Do
was
that
my
again.
Curly Howard. That was my Curly Howard.
See, this is why the guy's going to be getting the big bucks at the new theater job he's got. Is it at the website I mentioned before?
No.
No. It's a different
No.
different thing.
No.
Okay. Just curious.
So big new thing.
New thing
New thing.
about theater. Oh my God! Take me!
What is it?
I'm a
What is
shit-paying day job. Take me!
it? What is it? What
Just
is
like last time. You can't say it.
I
it? Is
can't
it
say it.
secret?
I
Is
can't
it
say
a,
it.
under contract?
That I'm waiting for. That's the thing. Contract was supposed to come Thursday, the day the
day.
sky fell,
Yeah.
and they were like, "Let's see, is this going to last 2 weeks? I mean, it's going to last at least 30 days. We know that."
Is
But-
it in person, the thing you're thinking, or is it something virtual?
It is both.
Yeah. The problem, if you look out, remember that the screen is sort of reversed. It's a
Okay.
very weird.
Oh, that
Thing.
you don't. You never look at me. I don't.
Yeah. Robert is
just
actually
indicate
sitting
that
to my
he's a-
right. But
Oh,
when I see
really?
him, he's it's a bizarre thing. So, did you ever? Let's go through some things, and we will have to have you on again because I've literally not gotten to one question.
So ask one question.
I will.
If you do your cabaret show, you should have him on your show.
Well, hell yeah.
He'd be a great guest.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No question about it. Let me speaking of interview. I'm having a fantastic time interviewing Robert Viagas, who was the founding editor of Playbill.com, will be a major player in some other thing. He's also got
That's a
this
secret.
website that he writes theater reviews for, and you are a theater
Teacher.
professor
Professor of theater at Five Towns
Towns
College.
College,
Young
right.
Where
man.
is the Five Towns College?
It's nowhere near Five Towns. It's
That's
in Dix
what
Hills.
Where is it?
It's in Dix Hills.
Is that Suffolk?
I know
They've got-
Dick had all those
Suffolk.
hills.
It's
but-
Western Suffolk.
So why
Yeah.
is it called Five Towns?
They have towns in Suffolk,
Oh.
and they have five. They have more than 5 towns.
Hmm.
And you teach theater history there.
Theater history.
Any other?
Right now, I just teach theater history.
Cool.
And he's going to do it online.
I go back. I go back to the earliest days and back to Thespis.
Wow.
Ooh,
That's
Well, I
quoted-
do like thespians.
There we go. Well, that's why they're called thespians. They're named after
We
Thespis.
quoted Thespis in the article.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When we were. Yeah.
Do you know who Thespis was?
I don't remember. No.
Thespis.
I was trying to look smart, but no, I have no clue.
Don't forget, a lot of the early Greek theater grew out of storytelling, and they would have storytellers who would go around and who would say, "Well, the gods did this, and then the gods did that, and then Zeus did this," but according to legend, Thespis, who was one of these traveling storytellers, was the first one who stood up, and instead of saying Zeus did this, he said, "I am Zeus, and this is what I did." So he was the first actor.
And megalomaniac.
And
Essentially,
megalomaniac,
yeah.
that's right.
Psychotic.
And he would not appear just telling a story. He would appear as the subject of the story.
No, that's that.
And that is why thespians are called thespians, because they inherit. See, you should come to all of you out there should come to my class, because I am full of this.
Well, are grown-ups allowed to take, or is it
Anyone can take it. Anyone
Oh,
can
yeah,
take
cool,
it. That's
cool.
right.
How many kids do you have in your history class? I mean,
About 26. No, 21. I had 21 kids.
Wow,
21.
that's
Super
small.
nice.
That's small.
Do you know the Mask of Comedy and Tragedy?
Yeah.
And do you know who they are?
okay, there. Let's see, Donald Trump and Mike Pence. No, who are
Close.
Yeah.
They are. They have names. The
Irving and Maurice.
that's Bud and Lou. They are Bud and Lou. Now,
Aw.
Thanos and Melpomene.
Okay.
The comedy is Thanos,
Okay.
and the tragedy is Melpomene. And if you
Were
watch,
they gods? Were they spirits? I mean,
they were below gods.
Oh, okay.
They were. I'm trying to think. That's why I'm fumfering here. I'm trying to remember what the word is. I'm having a blank at the moment. They were not furies.
They were home health aides when
they were
God
home
was
health
under the
aides,
weather.
that's right.
Yeah.
And if you look at the beginning of Disney's Hercules, they have a song. And Thanos and Melpomene are actually in the song.
Oh,
And
cool.
they're holding their little masks. So I played that for the students just to say that I'm not making this up. This is something that's actually out there.
Is it tough to keep, because this is a wide body, these aren't necessarily people who are going to go into theater and stuff. Is it tough to
Some
keep
of
them
them are.
interested?
No, at 5 towns, most of them want to go.
They're
they want to do
artistic
it
people, that's
professionally.
right.
Yes, it's an arts college.
Because I'm wondering if it's tough to keep them interested up until you get to the point of like 1950, and then they wake up. Or are you able to...
The course is taught in 2 parts. It's taught in the beginnings of theater up to 1900, and then the spring part is 1900 to the present.
Yeah.
Because a lot's been going on the last couple of years.
Well, we've
not
had the
this
internet.
week, not this week, but
Right,
up till now, a lot has been going on.
Let me ask you, I was going to say that I'm having a fun time with this interview, but I remember you telling me about the worst interview you've ever done.
Uh-oh.
It wasn't your fault.
Mm-hmm.
It was the actor's fault. Do you remember which? I can tell you who it was.
I've had a number of really bad...
Oh, let me have you tell me who, and then I'll, just in case, I'll tell you who I think it was. But who's some of the worst?
Some of the worst.
Well, you just wanted to shoot yourself and then them.
How about if I tell you about the worst performance I've ever seen?
Oh.
The worst performance that I ever saw, and I've seen a lot of performances.
It was called The Miracle of Long John's, a solo show.
It was a touring company of a funny thing. Another funny thing happened. It's a theme. It was a touring company, very low level tour. You've heard of first class tours, and you've heard of bus and truck tours.
Yeah.
Well, about 10 levels below that was this tour of a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum that appeared at the Emmeline Theater in Limerick, New York.
Yeah.
And an actor named Jack Carter, who I will not mention, was playing Pseudolus.
Wait, Jack Carter was a comedian, right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. Jack, they arrived in a school bus, and they were late, and the curtain went up late. And it became apparent very quickly into Comedy Tonight that Jack had not memorized the script. So he tried to ad-lib his way through the script of a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, which is hard enough on its own. But don't forget, this is Stephen Sondheim lyrics. So...
Well, he didn't memorize the song either?
He had not memorized. He had memorized it in pieces. And so he would kind of fumfer his way through the song.
Okay.
And he would leave out scenes. And the poor actors that he was working with were trying desperately to, I understand this. You have a ring with a gaggle. These sort of things to kind of help him. And it just got worse and worse. And then intermission came. And a lot of people left.
Yeah. You stayed.
I wanted to stay because I wanted to see how bad it was going to get. Because I realized that this was going to be a legendary performance.
Oh, God.
And I knew that someday I'd be on like a radio show and I would be able to tell this story. So I needed to stay till the end. And boy, am I glad I did. Because at the end of the show,
it's actually painful.
They stumbled through a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum. She's Lovely, where only Hysterium knew the lyrics to She's Lovely.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it's a duet.
I see.
Yeah.
No.
Awkward.
I thought only Jack Carter didn't know his lines, so there were other...
No. The other people knew their lines. It was only the
when he was in that song.
Only
right?
the Pseudolus didn't know
okay.
his lines. And when it got to the end of the show, the few people who were left in the audience started booing, absolutely booing the show at the end. There weren't a lot of us left, but there were enough of us left that, it made kind of a boo. And, the actors came out and bowed and, the perfunctory applause, and Jack came out and there was booing. There was booing.
Well, yes.
So then Jack came down and he gave the worst curtain speech ever, where he said that the problem was that the bus driver, who was African American, he did not use that expression.
No, he did. No,
it was
he
his
did not.
fault that the bus had come late, which threw him off. But the main problem was that they had ladies in the front of the audience who were in wheelchairs.
What?
And that he could see up their dresses, and that is why he was not able to remember the lyrics.
Wow!
The funny thing happened the way to the Forum. And the boos, they were diaphragmatic boos. They were like, oh! when people just booed and booed and booed until he just went and he walked off the stage. And I said to myself, this is a story that will live in my heart for the rest of my life.
Yes, it will. Did he use the N word when he was?
No, he used the Yiddish.
The
Yiddish word.
Rabbi Sol knows it. Yeah.
Okay.
Even so, I think he was trying to be funny, maybe about that. It was kind of there's that story I read in the paper when Charles Durning went up on his lines when he was doing a show, and he blamed. What did he say? He said it was on his period or something like that.
He didn't mention the vagina.
Yeah, but that was just a cute little thing after the show. He just went up on his lines one time. But I've told this, I'm not going to tell the whole story because I want you to tell more stories, but I had a similar experience watching Don Amici in Our Town. When he came out and he was old. He was like 89 years old at this point. And he was a stage manager in Our Town when Spalding Gray left. So they brought in Don Amici. I mean, do you remember that production?
I remember it well, yes. I didn't see Don. I saw...
lucky. You saw Spalding Gray. It was wonderful.
It was wonderful, yeah.
Don Amici either did not know or did not remember his lines. And the thing that strikes me as so hysterical about this is that he's the one character in all of theater who could actually come out on book. He's a stage manager. Yes, that's the character. Yes. He could hold the book with his lines in it. I mean, he's just repeating himself and he's going over and over. And it was terrible.
But it was, it was not only, with this forum production, it wasn't only the fact that the lines hadn't been memorized, which is very unprofessional.
Yeah.
And perhaps there was a reason for it. But it was this sort of aggressive blaming of
everything
people,
else.
Instead of saying, I'm the star, I'm the captain of the ship here, and whatever you I richly deserve your booze, and I apologize, and we'll give you your money back. Something like that. That would have been a classy way of dealing with it.
Somebody's giving you a thumbs up in the watch party.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they like that. I think that's a good idea.
The man has been on Sirius XM radio with like thousands of people listening. He's like, he gets a thumbs up on Dave's Gone By. We're proud. Somebody's watching.
Thank you for that thumbs up. I give you a thumbs up back.
I said theater highs and lows.
But we didn't get to the worst interview. Maybe you're blocking it out, or maybe
no. I don't want to. I have no trouble reflecting badly on Jack, but I don't want to reflect badly on this
on this particular person.
If we're thinking of the same person,
it's the Captain Hook guy.
From Cyril Richard? No. Much more recent. And I may hopefully I've had a number of bad interviews, but
the man was at that time.
I had one. Elvis. I will say this: I did have one interview one time about somebody who had a very well-known celebrity who had written a book. And I was asking them questions about the book. And they would just say, this is all in the book. Just read the book. And I would say, well...
You know why? They didn't write it.
I'd say, this is, we're talking about this. I read the book. That's why I'm asking you this question, because I know this is in the book. But for the people who are listening, or the people who are going to read this interview, they haven't read the book. I'd love you to talk about it. It's all in the book. It's all in the book. I would have to say that was
that's horrible.
That was a really bad interview because it was, and then I didn't write the story because I had nothing to write about.
Oh man!
I had no quotes other than read the book. I mean, that would have been the lead.
And make it,
Yeah, I could have. I didn't. The thing is, I had a lot of respect otherwise for this person. I had enough respect for this person that I didn't want to just get revenge on them and make them look like a jerk. Because he kept saying that he wanted to. He was going to Belmont Racetrack to bet on the horses, and it was almost time for the horses to run, and he wanted to wrap up the interview fast.
I don't think you wrote the book. When you don't know what's
that can happen too.
I've written books. When you write books, you know what's in your books. If you don't know what's in your book, you didn't write the book.
Well,
all right. So
I've
what's
ghosted
the best
books myself.
Besides this one? What is the best interview that?
This is
by far, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh
man, I have to say, I've just had some wonderful interviews. I'm sorry, my brain just suddenly overloads.
And he doesn't necessarily like the most famous person who ever interviewed, like just the most fun.
It could be we put in your coffee.
Yeah, or the hottest babe that you can stop drooling over them while you're.
All right, I would have to say that one of the best interviews that I ever did was with Charles Strauss, the composer of Annie.
He's
and
alive.
Bye Bye Birdie. He's alive.
Yeah.
He invited me to his house to do this interview. And we talked about his whole career. He was also in the process of writing a memoir.
Oh, yeah.
And he walked in and he said, this is the piano where I wrote Annie and Bye Bye Birdie. He said, would you like to play it? And so I I sat down at the piano, and I can play like a C. I could play a C chord.
Yeah,
I was like, perfect C chord. He's like, oh, you play? And I'm like, yes, I do. And he would sit there, and he would sit there, and he would start talking about Put on a Happy Face, how they came to write Put on a Happy Face. And then he would put his hands on the keys, and he'd play a couple of bars of Put on a Happy Face. And he would say how much he did not like the title of Bye Bye Birdie, and how much, when they came to him, he was so embarrassed by that title. And when they made the movie, they came to him and they said, that title is great. You got to write a song for that title. And he wrote just the cheesiest song he possibly could.
It worked though.
And they said, we love it. He thought they would reject it. And
somebody said about your book thing, they said obviously the person didn't want to give up any info about the book and only wants people to read it. That's no fun.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I always wait for the movie to come out.
It's almost like this person did not understand how interviews work. And
right. Yeah.
Again, because I had a lot of respect for him, I didn't flame him. I didn't burn him.
No, because it's like you're like past these.
He was an older man also, and I just had respect for all the things that he'd done, and he wasn't treating me with a lot of respect or my readers.
But how come because you won't name him now? Why won't you say his name?
Out of respect, I don't want to make him look like an old fool. Which he was being an old.
Is he alive? He's still.
No, he's not alive.
Was it that guy?
No.
What's the theater character that the Magnan one, the bad theater, the guy. The trickster. What was the name for the trickster? Theater.
Scapan.
But there's like a name for a trickster role in theater.
I forget.
Harlequin. Arlecchino. Anyway, can I finish telling my best interview story?
Yeah.
Because this is a lovely story. And so we were just talking, and every time we would talk about a show, and I went to some of his less well-known shows, All American, and he played Once Upon a Time. I had Charles Strauss sitting there playing these songs for me. And then I started asking him about shows that he wrote that didn't necessarily get done. And he said one of the ones that I really loved was, we worked for years, we're on a musical of Star Wars. And I said, you're kidding. And he said, he'd written. He said I wrote a beautiful song for it, and he played a song called "My Star," which is actually on the web. You can look it up. Charles Strauss Star Wars musical "My Star," and you can hear this.
Don't
song.
do it right now. Wait till my show's over.
Don't do it now. Wait till I'm off. You can do it next fast. I don't care.
Well, he's always been off.
There we go.
Right, So.
And he played this incredibly beautiful song, and he has a nice singing voice too. My star, you are my star, and it was a song for Princess Leia. And I have to say, I was with the press agent, and you know the scene in Hook when the movie Hook. There's a scene in Hook when Tinkerbell is taking the now adult Peter to Neverland, and she knocks him out and wraps him up in a blanket, and they fly through the sky over London, and she's dripping with fairy dust.
Oh, okay. I was wondering.
And they fly over at this bridge, and there's a couple kissing on the bridge, and some of the fairy dust falls on this couple, and they float up into the air while they're kissing.
Oh, sweet.
This is what happened to the press agent and to me when he started playing My Star. The two of us just floated up into the air with delight at hearing this song, and he's a great guy. Charles Strauss is a great guy. At one point, this is before this interview, and I told him about this, I got on the downtown #1 subway in New York, and I'm riding downtown. And who do I see across from me but Charles Strauss is sitting there with a woman, and Charles looks so sad, and he's like, has his face in his hands. I don't know what was bothering him. And nobody on the car knew who Charles Strauss was.
Yeah. They wouldn't know, with all due respect, they know Annie, they don't know.
They don't know Charles Strauss. I recently recognized Sheldon Harnick from behind at a theater. I looked at his
head and I said, this is Sheldon Harnick sitting right in front of us.
Anyway, so I saw him on the train, and I allowed one of the great moments of my life to pass, which was to walk over to him and start singing Put on a Happy Face to Charles Strauss. I could have done that. I just let that go because he seemed so sad, and I didn't think hearing that song would necessarily...
Did you ever ask him what he was saying about that?
I told him about that. He did not tell me what he was upset about. Okay. Although, I will say this. One story that I did tell him that was delightful. I'm very tall. I'm 6'4". My son is 6'8".
Is he a comedian, by the way?
No, my younger son, who's only 6'7", is the comedian. Yes. My
yeah.
older son, Ben, is 6'9", and when he was in 3rd grade, they were doing the Broadway Junior version of Annie at his school. And he went out for the to be a stagehand. And he came home, and we're like, did Miss Gage hire you as a stagehand? And he was like, no, they want me to be Daddy Warbucks. So now the school went from kindergarten to 5th grade.
They shaved his head, though. That was horrible.
5th grade.
Yeah.
He needed to shave at that age. He was very precocious. They usually gave the leads to the 5th graders, but they gave it to Ben, who was in 3rd grade.
Good Lord.
But the Annie was naturally only 10,000 girls came out for it. She was in 5th grade. So I said to Charles, do you know any other production of Annie where Daddy Warbucks is 2 years younger than Annie? And he said he was not aware of a production like that. So I was very proud to be able to add that.
Wow.
Charles Strauss, legend.
Oh my gosh.
How's that for a best interview story?
That is.
I've had some wonderful interviews, but I have to say that's in the top 10.
That sounds. Tell us one more, and then I have so many questions. So literally, but that was so good. Tell us one more about one of your best interviews, most memorable, most wonderful, delightful.
Man, so many great interviews. I once interviewed a carpenter at the New Amsterdam Theater because I collect ghost stories of Broadway theaters. I am the repository of ghost stories.
See, I'm the suppository of ghost stories.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. And that's why he's wrapped in tinfoil. I do collect them. In fact, I do library lectures called The Haunted Theaters of Broadway.
I'll stop you right there. I'm stopping because people who are interested, I think in June you're going to be part of the authors luncheon thing at our local library.
We're working that out. I have a conflict that particular day, but I would love to come and do another thing.
Oh,
and I don't know if my lectures are in. I have none in March, thank God, but I have a couple starting in April.
Locally, where?
Actually, the first one in April is going to be at the Franklin Square Library, my home library, where I started researching theater. So,
do you have a website where people can follow where you're going to be, or a Facebook page, or where?
I have a Facebook page, yes, and it's Robert Viagas.
Viagas. Viagas, which is how I travel.
That's right.
Viagas.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want people to know that they can see you do what you do. So
I have 3 things that I do. I do the 10 Secrets of Broadway.
Yeah.
I do the Haunted Theaters of Broadway, and then in April and
you got a hard ghost story. Somebody likes ghost stories.
Okay, great.
Maybe tell a
everybody
theater
loves
ghost
the ghost story.
Tell a theater ghost.
Well, anyway,
story.
I'm about to with this interview with the carpenter, one of the carpenters at the New Amsterdam Theater.
Was it Karen Carpenter or Richard?
It was not Karen Carpenter. It was a guy with a big beard.
She was built
Karen
like a nail.
Her beard. I was researching the ghost one of the ghosts that haunts the New Amsterdam. Olive Thomas, one of the most active ghosts on Broadway. Okay. She was I have a whole life story of her, but very briefly. Yeah. The New Amsterdam Theater is on the ground floor. Back in the days of the Follies, the Ziegfeld Follies, there was what they called the Ziegfeld roof, the New Amsterdam roof. Okay. They actually had a theater at the top of the building. And in those days, before air conditioning, they would sometimes have performances outdoors. Yeah. The New Am had a thing that would open, and you could perform with it, and if it rained, they could close it. Anyway, they used to have a show up there called the Midnight Frolics, and Olive Thomas performed in the Midnight Frolics, which was a little bit more of an adult show for Ziegfeld's fans. Anyway. They have a big stage. The stage is still there. It's now used as offices by Disney. Tom Schumacher has his office on what used to be the stage. However, she used to make her entrance from the section below the stage, which is known as the trap, which is where the word trapdoor comes from, to open the door that leads to the trap. Anyway, she used to make her entrance from there. She is known to haunt various parts of the theater, but she's most frequently seen in the trap, which is now a storage space. So I was there researching this thing, and I asked this carpenter. She appears mainly to men. I used to say exclusively to men, but I now have a story. A woman has now seen her, so I'm going to say primarily to men. The carpenter is one of the people who had seen her the most, and she's very active, and she talks, and she appears as a live person. She's not like a sheet. She appears as a live person. He said that he had seen her most frequently in the trap. So we went into the trap. And it was dark, and it was spooky, and there was like piles of things,
Yes.
things around, and there was a disembodied door, like a doorway, which a big heavy doorway. It was like a metal frame, big metal door, big metal doorknob, and flanges around it that you would put into a wall, and you build a wall up against it.
Yeah.
It was obviously a piece of a set or something. But you imagine like a corporate building door that you would see. That's what it was. It was a big metal door.
Yeah.
And he
You're
said,
not going to tell me you saw. All right.
he said, no, I didn't. Just
okay.
sit tight, pal. While I spin my tail.
We're not your students.
While I spin my tail. We were in this trap, and he said, well, this is where we see her. But he said she doesn't like come at your beck and call. She shows up when she wants to show up, not when you want her to show up. And I said, well, I'm here. So I said,
it's like a woman's period, basically.
I said,
yeah.
Okay. So anyway, we're in this. I was nonplussed by that.
Yeah, good.
We were in this room, and he said, call her. So I called out to her. I said, Olive Thomas, are you there? Olive Thomas. Nothing. Nothing. So and we just kind of shrugged and laughed. And but then I remembered something. They used to have a woman named Doris Eaton Travis who used to appear at the Easter Bonnet.
Well, lucky Travis.
And I interviewed her, and I referred to her as Doris. I said, hey, Doris. And she's like, I'm Mrs. Travis. And I realized that like women of that era, they used to get what they called in those days, in those very sexist days, their MRS degree. They get married, and that their identity changed to at least she kept her original name, Doris Eaton, as her part of her name. But she was known as Doris Eaton Travis and liked to be called Mrs. Travis. So I realized women of that period, they were very proud of their married name. So instead of calling out Olive Thomas, she'd been married to Jack Pickford. Oh. So I said, Mrs. Pickford, are you there? And all of a sudden, this metal door that must have weighed 800 pounds, it went boom. And the two of us just laughed because we didn't assume it was a ghost.
No, you didn't.
We assumed that like something had just happened at that moment. It was just a coincidence. Like, wow, that was funny. The timing on that was incredible. And he said, try it again.
Mm-mm.
And I said, Mrs. Travis? And the door went boom. Again.
Okay.
I had it on tape, and I played it on the radio.
Really?
Yes, I played the boom on the radio. But actually, that's kind of a lame ghost story. But it was kind of a lame ghost story because it would have been much more interesting if I had said, and then she appeared before us, and she said, "How you doing, fella?" Which is what she used to say.
She looked like Beatrice Arthur, and it turned out
it
was Beatrice Arthur.
He said sometimes there's a spiral staircase in the trap, and he said sometimes you just see her feet walking.
Oh, come on!
Yes, she appears as just feet. They have another ghost at the New Amsterdam Theater. That is the best ghost name of all the ghosts on Broadway. He's a disembodied shadow, and when you're walking up and down the stairs, you will sometimes see just a shadow going up and down the stairs, not like Peter Pan's shadow. It's not attached.
It was no coincidence.
Possibly.
She believes in ghost stories.
Anyway,
she said it was real.
Anyway, the disembodied ghost's name is the Black Goon. The Black Goon. That's the best name for a ghost. By the way, I'll say this: if you go into any entrance to the New Amsterdam, this is how much the people at the New Amsterdam Theater believe in her and see her. You go to any entrance, you will see a picture of Olive because you have to say good morning to Olive, or else stuff happens to you.
Oh, come on!
Go into the stage door. When they open the stage door, you'll see a picture of Olive when you first walk in. When you go down, when you enter the theater from the front, there's that long passageway, and you see all the pictures of the famous Ziegfeld stars, and you'll see Fanny Bryce, and you'll see W.C. Fields, and then the last picture on the right side is somebody you never heard of. It's a picture of Olive Thomas. You have to say good morning to her as you go into the theater, or else stuff happens to you.
Even patrons?
Patrons don't know. Patrons don't know. This is only people who work there.
Oh.
One of the, I have to say, there's a ghost at the St. James Theater known as the Laughing Ghost of the St. James because the ghost laughs like an insane laugh during performances. And I once asked an actress who worked at the theater, we don't know the name of this ghost. We know the name of a lot of the ghosts. We don't know the name of this ghost. And I said, do you think it was like an actor or somebody who wants to? And she said, obviously it was not a professional. No professional would disturb a performance.
Mm.
So most of these ghosts do not appear
It's probably
to the patrons.
critics. Yeah.
They don't. They appear after hours. They appear when the people who work in the theater.
Well, wait a minute. That's why I'm not joking about this. Isn't that the light that they put out on stage?
The ghost light.
Yeah, they call it the ghost light, right?
If you come to see one of my lectures, I will tell you the whole history of the ghost light and all the cool legends about the ghost light, etc. But I've already given you part of my Olive Thomas talk. So.
Well, no, that was wow. Because I am someone who does not believe in the paranormal. I really am. I'm, a total skeptic. So to hear stories like this, and I'm para-abnormal. Oh, my God. We're talking with Robert Viagas, who is the lecturer, who is the teacher at Five Towns College of theater.
And this is what my lectures and teaching is like.
Are you gonna,
storytelling like this.
Next 2 weeks, are you going to move everything online? You're just taking the weeks off, or how does it work? Or are you teaching there? Off, yeah. Where are you in theater history right now? This is a spring semester, so what are you teaching? Miller?
We actually suspended that because of all the things that have been going on. So we're actually not going forward with it. I think the rest of the semester.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize
that. To say.
But so wait,
but I'm going to be back. I'm going to be starting back with Thespis and the Greeks starting in September at Five Towns. So sign up now.
But wait a minute. How do kids, if kids are taking that class, how can they graduate? They lose the credit for that.
Hey, how 6 canceled their opening night last week?
Yeah.
I mean, this thing is serious and it's affecting a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
But you can't go online, Robert. We were online. Yeah. They won't convert you online.
No.
Wow.
No, but I'm saying, what about the other classes they're taking at Five Towns College?
I don't know the answer to. I don't know what's happening to the other classes.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
very self-absorbed.
Wow. You're looking at the king, fella. Yeah, you are looking at the king. By the way, Robert, let me ask you a quick question, because I would love to be talking to you longer. It's already noon, Eastern time, in the neighborhood.
Eastern time.
You're watching the Dave's Gone By Facebookio, Podcastio, Programmio of the Stream with me, Dave Lefkowitz. My darling and adorable wife, Joyce. This is not my adorable wife, Joyce. This is my adorable ex-boss, Robert Viagas. Find out more about him.
Get back to work.
That's right. No, he was all. I've said this on the air before. He was a very, very good boss. I never really. We had our skirmishes, but nothing ever where I'm like, I'm going to kill my boss, and I've had bosses like that.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me. No, I thought...
you always spoke well of Robert.
I really did. Even when
God bless you both.
You did.
Yeah.
God bless us.
So can you stick around for a little while longer while we do our quiz and be part of our quiz?
You would know the answers, though.
I might not.
No, the answer... Well, that's the point. That's the thing. Now, I don't know if my cousins, Jeff and Cynthia, are with us. If you are, please tell me.
What's the point of demands you can meet?
Yeah, there we go. We do every week something called our Today Yesterday Quiz.